Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're having a really good weekend. So the first place where I want to start off is how to draw trend lines. So I've just have a couple of examples of what traders are currently doing, or what some people are currently doing, as opposed to what really should be kind of the best practice. Okay, so so what normally happens is when kind of people look for an A shape, V shape, 1, 2, 3, whatever, this is how they'll draw a trend line, right? Which is like really steep or hugging the price action in a kind of straight line. And you've got another example here, yeah, straight down. Now, in my experience, these types of trend lines, which are really steep, can everyone see this here? Which is essentially hugging all the price action, all the candles all the way down. These types of trend lines are not that great in terms of reliability. Okay, so what will normally happen is people will draw a trend line like this. They'll say, okay, 1, 2, 3, cool, yeah, that looks good. Take a long in here and then end up getting stopped out. Take a long in here and end up getting stopped out, right? So in my experience and in all of the work and everything that I've done, the review for years and years and thousands of journals and all the back testing and things like that, in my opinion, the best trend lines are those which are like this, wavy. Okay, can you see how you've got this little wavy kind of action? Yeah, so you're essentially giving the trend a lot more time to develop and then break. And again, here you see this is really steep, but actually what you want to do is you want to connect the waves. Essentially, you're connecting the waves. Yeah, so what you'll find as well is that when you connect trend lines like this, so often they're going to break very, very close to the trigger. And obviously one of the things, what do we say? When you look for a trade entry, you want to get in as close to the trigger line as possible. Yeah, as close to the trigger line. Why? Because that's going to be your base of support, and also it means your stops are going to be a lot smaller. Okay, so here, look at how close the price breaks to the trigger. Gives you that mini pullback. You're in here, stops there. TP1 easily banked, right? Okay, it didn't go on in this case, but TP1 was easily banked. In this case, again, break so close to the trigger. Entry here, stop down here, TP1 easily banked, 3 to 1 even easily banked. Yeah. So when you're looking at trend lines, you want to look at this wavy price action. Now, the best way to pick this up and not get sucked in to something like that is how you position your charts, how you're looking at your charts. Okay. Now, when I look at my charts are like this by default. Okay. A lot of the journals I get are people sending me journals like this, and straight away, you know, you're so zoomed in, and that's how you're looking at price, that you're not even going to notice these kind of wavy things. You're going to be getting in here on the steep trend lines, right? But you're not really like looking at what's kind of happened, the general trend, things like that, and you're going to get sucked into moves like this. And like I say, I've said multiple times in the webinar and the broadcast, things like that, when you're viewing your charts, keep your charts like this. Because if your charts are like this, let's take, for example, this thing here, yeah? This example here. Now, delete a few of these lines. Okay. Okay. So you don't know what's happened in the future, yeah? Your trend line's like this. Your chart is like this. So you've drawn this trend line. Price is developing. Price is developing. Price is developing. Okay, so now you've got this develop, okay? Signal overall is still long. Yeah, bias is still long. Why? We've got high lows, high lows, high lows, high lows. Some people will argue, okay, yeah, this is a lower high V-shape 1, 2, 3, but again, it's context of where it happens on the chart, okay? Where does it happen on the chart? It's above trigger, it's above ribbon, it's higher lows all the way. You know, we're obviously in an upward trend. Does anyone want to say that we're in a downward trend here, or does everyone agree that we're in an upward trend? Everyone agree we're in an uptrend? Does anyone want to say that this 1, 2, 3 is happening below the trigger, or is this 1, 2, 3 happening above the trigger? This V shape. Above the trigger, yep. It's obvious, right? Yeah. So in my book, when this happens, you're not looking at shorts because it's happening above the trigger. Yeah. So price is developing. You're still not looking at shorts. This is your last low. This is your last low. Okay. Low is not taken out. Price is still developing. Low is not taken out. There's no lower low in place. Okay. Price is developing. You're extending this trend line down. So now it's created what? A double bottom, a quad bottom, quintuple bottom, whichever one you want to call it, whatever. Nice base of support. We're in an uptrend. We're getting this break of trend line. Price is moving above trigger. Look what happened here. B1 is turning green. And you're in, right? So then you take the trade. Is that clear to everyone, how I've just gone through that? I've got more examples, so I'll go through it, but I just want to make sure everyone's following me so far. Yeah? Okay, so let's carry on. Again here, looking at trend lines. Now, here we're in a downtrend, and let's say we're in a downtrend, we're approaching these lows, right? You're building a story, you're building a narrative. Okay, we're approaching some support, maybe we'll get a bounce, we'll look for long. Would you take a long in here? Hands up if you would take a long in here. You draw your trend line, it's quite tight to price. Would anyone take a long in here? Why? Because you wouldn't, right? Because price is firmly below the trigger line is red. B1 and B2, the indicators are red at this point in time where the break happens. So no, you wouldn't take it, right? Also, do you see how trend lines can be misleading if you draw them too tight? You could argument can be made here. We're approaching support, break of trend line. Oh, I'm going to go long. But at this moment in time, it's against the system, right? B1 and B2 is red. Price is below the trigger. Yeah. Compare that to this trend line here, which is, again, you see the waves. Does everyone see the concept of this wave that I'm talking about here? It moves away, comes back, moves away, comes back, moves away, comes back. Put your hands up if you don't understand the concept of the wavy trend line. Cool. Okay. So a couple of you. So let me quickly recap for you. Okay. So wavy trend line is basically where price is, let's say it hits a point here. Yeah. Okay. Price moves away. It comes back. So you see, you've got this like U shape, like there's clear gap between the price, between these little trends. You've got high, low, high, high, low, high, high, low, high. Yeah. There's a gap. There's a little wave. Think of a wave. Again, there's a gap. Yeah. These are the types of trend lines where where you've got multiple highs, which are not hugging the trend line so tight like this. Do you see how this trend line price is so close? It never moves away from this trend line. It's basically touching it all the way down. When a trend line is being touched all the way down, in my opinion, or it's not really even my opinion, in all the work that I've done in terms of backtesting statistics, things like that, these are not that reliable. The more reliable trend lines is where you have a touch, price moves away, comes back. Okay, so this is your first point of trend line, yeah? Price moves away, comes back. Price moves away, comes back. So now you've got 3 touches, right? And then it's broken. Okay, let's have a look at, I don't know, let's just, again, price. Imagine if you're drawing a really tight trend line, something like this. Yeah. You can argue this is a break here, but again, price never really moves away. It's just hugging all the way down. Whereas if you go here, for example, price touch, there's clear gap, pulls back, touch, clear gap, pulls back, gap here, touch, pulls back, then it breaks. Okay, so again, so you've got price moves down, you've got the gap, pullback, move down, pullback, gap, etc. Yeah. Again, here price is quite tight all the way. Compare that to nice breakdown, big gap, breakdown, gap here, breakdown, gap here, breakdown, gap, breakdown, gap, breakdown. Finally, you've got multiple different separate touches. Yeah. This is not multiple separate touches. This is basically just one touch hugging the trend line all the way down. Whereas here you've got multiple separate touches close in and around. Yeah. So that's essentially what it is. And again, like I said earlier, look at the way you've got this wavy trend line and price again breaks right close at the trigger. Breaks that trend line right close at the trigger. It's not like as soon as it breaks, you go long. There's still, you know, you wait for that mini 1, 2, 3 above, etc. But it's a really important thing, this, and that's from all the thousands and thousands of charts that I've studied. When you have a trend line that's a wavy trend line like this that breaks very close to the trigger, the success rate of those trades is pretty good. Okay, so this is an example of a trade that actually I think 3 members took on this week, right, in the journal. So I wanted to bring this up quite specifically, so you can see, right? So this is on USD CAD. So again, you've got the break, pull down, but again, look at how the price is relatively close to this trend line. Yeah, there's a small gap here, but otherwise you've got all these candles that are so close. And look at also where the break of the trend line happens. It's quite far away from the trigger. Yeah, this is like 15, 16 pips from the trigger. Compared that to, for example, a wavy trend line that if we had been just more patient and we wait for price to develop, there's your touch, wave 2, and look at what happens. Would you have gone long anywhere at this point on this trend line with the wave? Hands up if you would have taken a long at some point here, if this was your trend line. And this trend line, it's not like you had to wait for 5 hours. It's just the next touch. So the trend line here, and essentially you're just extending it out, right? So you don't know any of this stuff has happened, but that's your first wave, yeah? So you connect that and you're extending this down. So you're extending this trend line here from this first wave. Yep. Resistance held, resistance held. So would anyone have taken a long here at any point? No, right? Why? Because obviously resistance was not broken. Yeah. So if we turn it around, okay, this is your first point. This is your second point. So that's a big wave, big gap. But would you have gone, you would have wait, and look at where this break happens. Again, right at the trigger. Yeah. So you could say, what if I draw my trend like that? Again, yeah, cool. All right. You know, there's nothing as if you're really speaking in a strict sense of a trend line, cool, yeah, it's a trend line. But where does the break happen? It's quite far from the trigger line. Can you see that? Can everyone see that? Hands up if you follow. Yeah. Do you see how it's quite far from the trigger line? So in instances like this, what I would say is you just redraw. Now here, you could say, okay, cool, this is close to the trend line, but then there's obviously the additional filters. Is there a V-shape 1, 2, 3 below trigger to go short? No, there isn't, right? There's not a V-shape 1, 2, 3 below the trigger to go short. It's cutting up and down the trigger at this point in time. Yeah. So when it's cutting down, cutting up, cutting down, what do? You sit on your hands, right? Redraw again. Cool. So now we've got this break. Do you go short here? Aggressively, one could. Aggressively, one could. Why? Because now as well, you have 3 touches on this wavy trend line. You've got that resistance there, which is confirmed. Look at the price and the ribbon. The ribbon is sloping down. It's crossed, it's sloping down. B1 has turned red. Aggressively, you could. But strictly speaking, in terms of the system, 1, 2, 3. V-shape below the trigger. Can everyone see that? V-shape below the trigger. Can everyone see this V-shape? Does anyone not see this V-shape? Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Now, if you miss that, then again, you've got this mini 1, 2, 3 here as well. And you can get in there, which is where I've highlighted the box, yeah? So you've got 2 opportunities here. Okay. And I think that was the last example of my chart. So trend lines, when you're drawing your trend lines, it takes practice, okay? This is not going to be something that, you know, like someone just commented, where was it? Yeah, get it, but confuses me a little bit, especially live, right? So yeah, like it's not going to be something that you'll now like suddenly be able to smash it, and you know, it'll take a bit of practice and to train your mind, because obviously you're used to doing trend lines in a certain way, right? The best way to incorporate this is keep your charts like this. Okay, this is a 15-minute chart on USD CAD, and you know what will be really good for you guys is if you literally go back on a 15-minute chart, pick, let's say 4 charts after this call, and you sit down and you say, cool, I'm going to go in, just draw, you know, just going to draw trend lines and see what happens. Yeah, just going to draw wavy trend lines all over the place and see what I notice. Yeah, and just carry on and carry on and carry on. And that's how you're going to learn. Yeah, and that's how once you kind of repeat it over and over again, it will become a lot clearer for you. Okay. All right. So wavy trend lines. Does anyone have any questions on the wavy trend lines? And is it clear? If it's not clear, please do say, and I'm more than happy to go over it again. This will make a massive difference to your trading. So if it's not clear, do shout. Please do shout now. If I don't hear from you, I'll assume everyone kind of understands. Cool. The beauty of this, okay, the beauty of this is when you have your charts like this is, now I've got scalpers in the room, I've got swing traders in the room, and I've got day traders in the room. This type of trend line drawing you can do on any time frame. Okay, whatever your system is, in terms of whether you're swing trading, scalping, whatever time frame you want to use, you can implement this system. Okay, this way of drawing trend lines. So that's the beauty of it. It's not restricted. In this case, I'm using a 15-minute chart. On some of the other charts, you'll see that there are actually 5-minute charts, and it works equally as well. Yeah. So depending on what system, how you want to trade, but so do try and do that. Hey, bud, your trend line after the break is tight compared to the others. Is that because of 1, 2, 3 below trigger? You mean this one? This one here? Yeah. Okay. So that's just because we're looking for that, basically the mini pullback after the big break. What I'm looking for on the trend line is just to determine the direction. Yeah. Then after, on the mini pullback, this you'd essentially go onto a lower time frame for to do this anyway. Yeah. But the main trend line that you're drawing is on here, like the big gap. Does that make sense? So this is, we're just waiting for the mini pullback to get in short and refine the entry, but the actual short signal has been fired here. This is where the short signal is fired for me. The signal has fired. Now we're waiting to refine the entry, which is going to be there. Okay, does that make sense? So here, if price had broken above here, let's say, the long signal would have been fired. Then we're waiting refined entry, and we're waiting for that pullback. Yeah. Do all long tails need to be included in the trend line, or can we dismiss one if it is an anomaly? Good question. Very good question. My view is that you initially include them. So let's say, for example, let's just use this example here, right? So let's say this was a really big tail, okay? Now, if you have, let's say this was your big tail, right? Now, initially, I would draw it. And then if you find that, let's say, price was not getting up here, and maybe this was a true trend line or whatever, you can, or price went further up here, you can adjust your trend line. But initially, I would say include it, unless if it's like a crazy huge tail, right? But in this case, this is not a massive tail. This is just kind of normal part, right? And then, you have to make a judgment on it after. But majority of the time, most of the time, you will find that it's all kind of included and encapsulated, even the tails in the trend line. Yeah.